Section 7 of Stanton White, A Romance of the New South, by Asa Zadel Hall. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 7, A Day in St. Augustine. "Did you say that we are to spend but one day in St. Augustine?" said I, as we alighted from the train. "Why, it will take several days to see all the points of interest." "But we came to camp out, not to tire ourselves with sightseeing," replied White. "If you knew the price of hotel accommodations, I think you would change your several days plan. At any rate, we can judge more accurately how long it will take us after we have started. Come, the day is yet new. Let us away to the plaza." "Afoot or by carriage?" "By carriage. A great suggestion from one who is trying to rough it." "No, the distance is not great. We shall walk." "Wait for Tiger and me," pleaded Jenkins, who seemed to be vainly striving to recall something. "Brother," I exclaimed impatiently, "what do you want of him, anyhow?" But Jenkins was gone, and there was no choice but to wait. At last we were started, and an impossible array we must have made. 3 soldiers bold and a yellow dog. 1,000 times that day I wished that the one who had curtailed the dog had begun at the other end of the cur's anatomy. Oblivious of my untoward desires, Tiger was reveling in his newly found liberty, chucked full of canine joy from heart to bark. He careered about Jenkins like a steam merry-go-round, winding Jenkins in the chain, tripping up passing pedestrians, and getting in everybody's way. 10 minutes' walk brought us to the plaza, where we threw ourselves upon a rustic seat to enjoy the refreshing shade. Jenkins hitched Tiger to a tree before he dared to give heed to his surroundings. "What's that over there?" said Jenkins at length, indicating with his forefinger a white pillared building open at the sides. "That's what is sometimes called the Slave Mart," quoth White. "What do they call it?" "Look at Tiger," I interposed. "He's chewing up that tree, and here comes a copper." Jenkins made a lunge for the dog. "Let's hurry across to the cathedral," suggested White. "Perhaps the policeman has not noticed us yet." Jenkins was not loath to be gone. The cathedral reached, and no one interposing, we stationed Jenkins and Tiger in a shadowy corner of the vestibule, while White and I proceeded to explore the nave. As our eyes became more accustomed to the dim light, we began to discern some of the paintings which graced the walls. I knew that White had very decided artistic tastes. He seemed to be studying some of the scenes from the Passion Week. I knew nothing of sacred art, and cared little for it, but I ventured to ask my companion how he liked the pictures. "I don't like them." "Aren't they well painted?" "Yes, fairly well. But what I object to is the artist's ideal." I waited silently for him to proceed. "Just see how the chief figure in all these paintings is depicted. Everywhere he is portrayed as a suffering, rejected, maltreated man. His face is furrowed with anguish. His brow is gory or covered with bloody sweat. While not wishing to minimize his sufferings, I believe that a great mistake is made by choosing only scenes from the Passion Week. I'd like to see depicted somewhere hereabout the radiant Christ. I'd show him as he appeared transfigured, or as he said, 'It is I, be not afraid,' or as he stretched out his hands to bless his disciples and was thus parted from them. I'd picture him in all the nobility of perfect manhood, in the power of omnipotence, the majestic sweetness of infinite love, the effulgence of divine glory." "It's a pity you were not an artist, or a preacher," I laughed. "Perhaps that copper has forgotten Jenkins by this time. Shall we venture forth again?" My companion glanced for a moment at the far end of the room, where an embankment of snowy marble, brilliant with lighted candles, faded into the shadows of the dark-tinted gable. Then he drew a long breath and said, "I'm ready." Along Charlotte Street, with its quaint white-plastered houses and high-walled gardens, then eastward along a yet narrower street we hastened, Tyga in the lead, closely followed by Jenkins. A half-hour sped quickly amid the curious of the Vedder Museum. Then, having partaken of a lunch at a nearby restaurant, we sauntered leisurely toward the grounds of the Ponce de Leon. Here White insisted upon leaving us, in order that he might complete arrangements for our trip. He had scarcely gone when Jenkins announced his determination to return to the depot. "What's the matter, Jenkins?" said I. "You're not sick?" "Doggone it, Tyga has taken his exercise at my expense, I fear." "Well, I'll see you at train time." When they had gone, I threw myself down upon a stone seat in a cool corridor overlooking an inner court of the Ponce de Leon. In a dream-like stupor, I languidly drank in the beauty of the scene. The patch of sky visible above the court is of as delicate and stainless a blue as that which arches above Seville or Madrid, thought I. Against this bit of sky as a background rose domes and pinnacles, fair visions in gray stone and red tiling. Lost in vague fancies, I fell to wondering what the scene lacked to make it genuinely Spanish. In yonder tower, I mused, near the top is an arched window opening upon a balcony, where, at the appointed hour, I might expect to hear the muezzin's call to prayer. The breeze that blows along this corridor is as balmy as the spice-laden zephyr which fans the Mediterranean. The fountain yonder in the court plays as fitfully and sparkles as delightfully as did any fountain in old Granada. By its side springs the jasmine, the oleander, the palm. The heavy aroma of 1,000 flowers is in the air. Yonder flits the blue-hued cardinal, and among the thick leaves of the fig tree the mocking-bird will sing its vesper hymn. Had I but a few ruins here to feed my fancy, I'd people this place with the lords and ladies of long ago. I'd have this colonnade resounding with the tread of armed men, while every room and passageway would be rich in treasured legend, every court and pillar would bear the name and escutcheon of some doughty warrior of the past. Ah, time! Thou art the great romancer. Without thy transforming touch, the graceful pillar, the tessellated floor, the marble basin are but commonplace and low. I was aroused from my reverie by White's return. "Why, old man, have you been asleep?" he said. "I may have dozed a little," said I, viewing him with drowsy eyes. "Dozed a little? If you knew how I have been shaking you for the last 2 minutes, you'd say it was a pretty heavy doze. I hope that you are rested sufficiently so that you can enjoy Fort Marion this afternoon." "What time does our train start?" "It is scheduled to leave at 6:15. That'll give us 2 hours at Fort Marion if we hasten." "How much will it give us if we don't hasten?" returned I, rising lazily. "You don't look extremely ambitious, that's a fact," laughed White. "Nor do I feel so." Proceeding up St. George Street, we caught a glimpse of the old city gateway, with a remnant of the wall. Then down we swept upon the fort. After exploring the room from which 2 famous Seminole chiefs made their escape, we joined a party which the guide seemed about to conduct through the far-famed dungeon. The guide stood parleying about his reliability and the great accommodation he was showing, until a portly gentleman of the party slipped $1 into the not unwilling hand. Then the procession started, the guide and the portly gentleman in the lead. Through a shadowy room, and then through a narrow passageway, plunged the procession. At the end of the passageway the guide disappeared through a door, if indeed an opening 2 feet square could be dignified by that term. The portly gentleman was bidden to follow the guide, but weighty objections were offered. Finally, by dint of much urging on the part of the guide, and much kicking, puffing, and shuffling on the part of the portly gentleman, the deed was done. A rubicund face, wet with moisture, showed through the gloom next to the face of the guide. One by one, nearly the whole party scraped through the opening in the wall, and dropped to the ground some 5 feet below. "What if you all was 'ere for keeps?" said the guide, showing his first appreciation of the humor of the situation by a slight twitching of the ends of his mustache. "Don't they tell some frightful stories about skeletons they found when the dungeon was discovered?" queried one of the ladies, who had contented herself with remaining above at the opening, and was now straining her eyes to see all that was revealed by the small circle of light from the torch in the murky blackness. "Oh, Bess, don't ask such questions, or I'll faint," responded another feminine voice. "Well, now," began the guide with his characteristic drawl, "I ain't much on stories, but," he added with a twinkle in his eye, looking toward the fair auditors above, "they do tell that the Spanishes had several iron cages hung up around the wall, and skeletons." Here a piercing shriek interrupted the speaker, and feminine heads were hastily withdrawn from our view. Then, seeing that the portly gentleman betrayed interest, the guide proceeded to relate a harrowing tale of what he had heard from a former guide. The dank, murky air seemed to lend color to the tale, and after a moment of gruesome silence, an unnatural voice above our heads exclaimed, "Oh, Arthur, hadn't you better come back now?" Our stout friend, perhaps remembering the figure he had cut while entering the dungeon, politely insisted that the rest of the party should precede him. As we emerged into the outer light, we heard sundry grunts and sounds of scraping and shuffling, which proceeded from the mouth of the dungeon. "That's the haunt our guide told us about," said I. "Undoubtedly," laughed White. "Come, let us take a look at the harbor while the guide is extricating the lost spirit from his prison-house. May all the shades help him." Mounting a watchtower that was scarred by many a hostile shot, we gazed skyward and seaward. The ocean was a dazzling sheen of sunlit crests and mirror-like troughs. Fascinated, I watched the eager onslaught of the waves upon the unyielding sea-wall. "Anastasia Island," said White, pointing to a luxuriant oasis in the waste of the waters. Thither numerous waterfowl were winging their course. Snow-white cranes, noisy geese, herons, snipe, and an endless variety of fishing birds. With clamorous flight they were early seeking shelter, and soon the island was alive with fluttering, screaming, restless rest-seekers. With every new arrival there was a local stir, perhaps a short encounter if quarters were too crowded, the vanquished seeking other accommodations. Gradually the arrival of flocks lessened in frequency, and as the sun sank lower, quiet prevailed upon the island, save for the outcry of some malcontent who found himself uneasily perched, and must needs jostle and flutter a little to see that he had his full share of the tree. The dying breeze wafted to shore-boats laden with pleasure-seekers and fishermen. White watched them thoughtfully. "A penny for your thoughts," said I, noting the faraway look in his eyes. "You value them too highly. I was just thinking over some of my past experiences. Years of youth are much like the boats you see yonder. Flitting like white-sailed ships they come, and when seen near at hand, some are found to be laden to the water's edge with sorrow and hardship, while others shall haste joyously over the bounding billows to pour a gleaming cargo of blessings upon the white sands of a pure life." "May yours ever be the latter sort," I exclaimed. "Thanks, old man, but it takes both kinds to make manhood." Silently we watched the sun until it was a great ball of fire cooling itself in the ocean, and dazzling the eyes of curious onlookers by a path of gold leading far, far away to where the sea melted into the stainless blue of the summer sky. There, far out of the sight of man, the sun would dip himself among the mosses and coral reefs, and lave his fevered brow after the weary day. "Come," said White finally, "we must go now, or miss our train." "By the way," said my companion, as we were turning from the fort, "if anyone is looking for a sermon in stone, yonder is a good one." "I see a fig tree growing out of the wall of the fort," I replied, "but where's the sermon?" "The sermon must be in yourself, I suppose." It impressed me that the fig tree, by its silent natural growth, had accomplished what all the old-time cannon with their noise and bluster had failed to do. For you see that the wall of the fort is crumbling. "Well, White, I guess that I'll look for the fig trees and let you look for the sermons. I've always had considerable sympathy for the materialistic man who thought he had found a printer's blunder, declaring that anyone should know that no sane author intended to write sermons in stones and books in running brooks, but what was intended was sermons in books and stones in running brooks. Save the rest of your jokes, and I'll save my sermons until after we have caught the train." Thus my companion as we hurried from the fort. End of Section 7, read by James K. White, Chula Vista.